McGill Schussler, and I am Chair of the HART Finance and Audit Committee. Melanie Williams, Chair of the Operations and Safety Committee, is also in attendance. The meeting format is hybrid. A quorum is physically present at the HART Administrative Office, 1201 East 7th Avenue, the Florida Conference Room, and the rest of the board members are participating via communication media technology. Please please look at the screen or devices, and an image of the flag is displayed. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Staff, please do a roll call.
Committee Member Castor. Committee Member Castor. I believe she's in the lobby. Committee Member Castor for attendance.
Here.
Thank you. Committee Member Kemp.
Here.
Committee Member Knight.
Here.
Committee Chair Schussler.
Here.
Committee Member Williams.
Here.
You do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Okay, rules for participation and roles and responsibilities of both committees are provided in the packet. Next, we will have public comment. There's one person scheduled to speak. It will be a 3-minute duration per speaker. Staff, please proceed.
Ms. Proctor is here in person to provide public comment, sir.
Good morning, Ms. Proctor. Come on up. Please state your name for the record and your comments. Thank you.
Nephthys Proctor. Can you hear it better? Okay. Okay. Thank you, full board, for allowing me to speak. I'd like to read something that I prepared. An investigation was recently opened up by the board to investigate the CEO and her actions behind the termination of several employees. HART and their lawyers are actively, right now as we speak, are trying to pay me for wrongful termination through a severance. The stories have been changing consistently on why I was terminated. At first, it was said that I quit until I provided an email saying that I was terminated from the person who terminated me. Now they're saying that I can't get my job back because they're restructuring the company, but offering sign-on bonuses and moving expenses for out-of-state candidates. I was told that my position was not open, but actively on the job board right now, there's a position open in the body shop. I was a master painting body technician for 5 years at HART when the 10-foot scaffolding fell on my foot. I was not offered workman's comp, but was told to call FMLA and wheeled out in the office chair. After I reported to my supervisor that I fell and the scaffolding fell with me and my foot was broken. I was fired while I was on long-term disability and my insurance cut off in the middle of an injury. I just recently on Friday had a meeting with the CFO and Counsel Bailey. When I confronted the lawyer and the CFO about the discrepancies in the responses that were given about my termination, I was pretty much told to sue HART in a nutshell. The reasons that they gave EEOC does not match up with the reasons that's in the severance package. It was stated that I did not show up to work, but the day before, I was fired by the person that was not authorized to fire me to cover for HART, not offering me workman's comp. Everything that I'm stating, I have in writing. I have been trying to work with HART for the past year and a half, trying not to get lawyers on my behalf. The lawyers that work for HART have been extremely arrogant and does not want to take responsibility for the actions made on HART's behalf. I want to report this, but what good is it going to do when it's being turned over to HART's lawyers who are a part of the problem of what's going on? It is conflict of interest in my situation, and I'm trying to get this resolved without suing and bringing more bad publicity to the organization. I am not sure who is shadow puppeting from behind the scenes, but this problem just does not fall on the CEO's shoulders when it's others that are actively in on it with her, if she's part of it. This is how taxpayers' money is being spent on unnecessary litigations with issues that can be solved with reasonable compromise. I am here because intimidation tactics does not work when you're truthful. I am already lost so much due to this situation, so there's nothing more that the administration and the lawyers at HART can take from me at this point. But I was given a friendly advice by HART counsel that they would tell me to be quiet. but they're not. So this is the reason why I'm here speaking to inform the board and the public about the retaliation tactics that are being pulled with taxpayers' money, my money, to silence the victims. Even when I spoke at the November 9th board meeting, only the last 10 seconds of my 3-minute public comment was published on YouTube. So is it really a public comment? In the meeting, I explained in more detail of how I wasn't offered workman's comp. Thank you, but
thank you.
thank you,
I'm
that's
sorry.
pretty much the gist. But
Okay, thank you very much.
thank you so much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you.
I just want to say for the record that I understand this is part of an active claim, potential litigation, and would recommend that there are no additional comments on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, that provide, yes,
Yeah, we recognize just to
yes.
ask, and I obviously don't want to have anything with that, to do with that, but why would the comments not be aired on YouTube? Is there any reason for that? Do we not have a complete copy of the whole meeting on YouTube?
That would be for staff. I don't manage the YouTube channel.
That would be marketing and communications is my understanding. Are you speaking of the written comment section for YouTube or?
No, I'm not. I'm just,
Are you-
this
are
woman
you-
said
are-
that she
I'm
made
a little
comments.
confused.
I'm
Are you
just,
saying in general that comment sections don't appear in the YouTube presentation? for
no,
this?
no, no, I'm
Oh,
not.
okay.
I'm just referring to what she said was that she got up, I assume that she got up, I'm just asking.
Okay.
She got up and made a public statement at the meeting. She said only a few seconds, as I understood what she said, only a few seconds of her public comment was aired on YouTube. And I wondered, can we make sure that the entire YouTube is up? And can we please check that?
Can we
Because
verify that?
Yeah, we could verify
Yeah,
that.
okay, let's verify that
I was gonna say,
if that's the
we'll
case.
get
And I
with
think
her
that's the
and
intent.
ensure which meeting she's speaking of, which comment she's speaking of, and make sure that it's on YouTube.
okay, and then I have a second question. I'm just so I understand, if there are, because I do not understand this, but if there are employees that are leaving HART, or there's negotiations with regards to them being terminated, who is responsible at HART? I mean, I know we have employment and labor lawyers. So do those all go to the employment and labor lawyers? What's our protocol with regards to that?
Would I hear your question be not specifically about this matter?
Right.
But generally, when any kind of claim comes in, regardless of the type of claim, how is it kind of dispersed out in terms of personal injury, employment, those kinds of things? That's typically done through internal counsel, and perhaps it would be appropriate, and I was actually going to make a recommendation that we kind of expand on this conversation as to how it relates to general counsel, in-house counsel, and those things, but maybe, and perhaps there can be a conversation to explain the process of when a claim comes in, how that's assigned, who that's assigned to, and how is that managed? Because it sounds like it's a bigger question than just this one particular claim.
Yes, and what this initially started, as I can imagine that this happens, is a termination claim, it sounds like. Then it went to something else, it sounds like, and now, so when you said you were going to make a recommendation, you were going to make a recommendation now, or when, or in the
There's
future?
an item on your agenda today as it relates to the general counsel procurement. And we're not there yet, and when we get there, my plan is to make a recommendation that we have a bigger conversation just generally about general counsel services, because you're looking at a new procurement, and I can't be involved in that conversation. But what we can be involved in is looking at the way your entire legal services are provided as it relates to both the general counsel and in-house counsel, and how those are dealt with. And part of that conversation, I think, is appropriate to say, okay, so you have in-house counsel, if there's items that have to go out of house, how do we send those out? What's that process? And I think that would be a better function at like a workshop where we have a bigger conversation about it.
Right, I just wondered how this works, and it would seem appropriate. I had the questions so that we could deal with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Knight, you're
Yeah,
recognized.
good morning. So, to make sure she's stating, apparently, the last meeting or so, that after the meeting, when she spoke, and there was nothing on YouTube for the few seconds, so you saying you don't know which way. Can ask her again, because I'd like to know if it's supposed to be the full meeting, just like Chair Lady said, then it should be. Another thing is getting hurt on the job. Then I'm hearing termination. If she's on light duty or whatever like that, not getting into the case, but I don't feel that we know enough, even our chair lady, on what's going on. We don't want to be hit when there's times where we have to, increase or whatever. You ask for monies and different things, but we're not getting all the information that we need, and that needs to stop. So with that and what she's saying or whatever like that, I'm concerned if it can get to the chair and she get back with us, I'd like to know what's going on.
As it relates to this specific claim, it's my recommendation that we don't speak of that publicly, because if it's going to go into litigation posture, we have to be cognizant of that potential issue down the line. As it relates to this specific issue, I am happy to find out some more information and have that conversation with the chair of HART board, so that way we can at least provide that level of information. But I will say that if there's information that is not appropriate to have publicly stated, it's my recommendation that we don't. So let me do this. Let me find out some more information about this particular claim, discuss that with the chair, and see if there's any part that can be discussed publicly, or we can discuss that privately and deal with that issue down the line. But going back to my original point, which is I think there does need to be a bigger conversation about your general counsel services, your in-house and out-of-house services, so that I'm going to be asking for some guidance on when we get to that point in the agenda.
Okay, sounds good. All right. In the meantime, Danielle, if you could check, and Ms. LeGrand, check with the appropriate people to make sure that all comments in its entirety are presented in the YouTube channel, so that everybody has the benefit of what's being transpired, what's being said.
Yes,
Okay?
sir.
Everybody in
Absolutely.
agreement with that? Any questions? Yes, Ms. Williams. You're recognized.
Thank you. I think my question is centered around what Chair Kemp started to say, and the in-house services versus external services. And is the later conversation going to discuss the process under what happens when something happens internal versus external?
I mean, I think that it's our recommendation from the general counsel perspective that we look at your policy the way it's drafted right now. And I think in order to decide how to proceed forward with any changes to that policy, there's going to need to be an understanding about how legal services are provided as of right now and what those processes are. And we're going to talk about this later, but I mean, I can
Right.
just kind of talk more about this now, whatever your pleasure is. But we might want to just wait till that agenda item comes
Right.
up so we can talk about it a little more fully then.
Understand. And one more question. At what point, and I guess this is maybe you will choose to answer or not based on what we can and cannot say, but at what point of the investigation will we determine how far back do we go? I think Ms. Proctor talked about November 9th, and I guess I'm not sure how many more situations will occur to determine what the scenarios are or not.
Do you mean in terms of her claim, or when I say her claim, I mean there sounds to me, and I don't really have a lot of details on
Right.
the specific issue, that there's an employment claim that is being made, and I'm asking not to discuss that
Right.
publicly, but the other statement that was made related to the YouTube recording that is put out, out live streamed, and then I understand it's recorded, and whether or not her comments were cut off. That to me isn't a general counsel services issue. That's more of a what's happening with your technology issue. And I think Danielle had mentioned that and Ms. LeGrand mentioned that they would try and identify if there's a technological glitch that's happening with that YouTube video not being fully displayed, either during the live stream or after the fact.
So is Mrs. Proctor's process that she mentioned, does that go through a grievance process beyond, is that what happens? Or
I don't have enough information to be
I
able to
understand.
answer
That's-
that
that's
question.
fair. Okay.
But
I
I
understand.
intend to get that information.
I
and
understand.
provide it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you very much. Next step is the approval of the minutes, of the packet of the minutes from November 21st, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Staff, please take roll call.
Committeemember Castor?
Yes.
Committeemember Kemp?
Yes.
Committeemember Knight?
Yes.
Committee Chair Schisler?
Yes?
Committeemember Williams?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next are presentations. First one will be on the Operation and Maintenance Metrics Report from Mr. Bobby Edwards, Director of Transportation, and Justin Lafleur, Director of Fleet Maintenance. Mr. Edwards, you are recognized to start. Welcome.
Before they get started, could you move that camera down? We can only see the tops of everybody's head at the presentation.
Oh,
There you go. Perfect. Thanks.
Operations and maintenance.
do you have to do anything at 11? Thank you. Okay, I meant to ask earlier.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Chair, Directors, Ms. LeGrand. So I'm going to be presenting on the transportation portion of the monthly metrics. Before I start, I know that last month, Ms. Williams, you had a couple requests, and I have 3 slides where we looked at some trends and we provided it for you. Today is going to be slides 3, 5, and 7. So I just want to bring that. The first slide you guys are looking at, this slide shows our total ridership by mode, and we also have the on-time performance for that ridership. So for the month of November, we had 958,036 for ridership, and broken down, 846,000 is for fixed route bus, 95,000 for streetcar, 16,000 for paratransit, and 371 for the HART Flex. This next slide shows a 6-month trend. Back to you again, Ms. Williams. This is one of the requests that you had. So as we look at ridership, we see an increase, a trend line that shows an increase for ridership. November was at 958,000 riders, short of October, which was 1 million. But we also had some days that were holidays in November and a flood day. So we expect that the numbers are going to constantly increase on ridership from that standpoint. Then we look at our average weekly daily ridership. As you can see on the far right, the Route 1 and 6 and 34 are over 3,000 riders on an average daily. Then we take a look at our top 5 routes that has the most ridership versus the on-time performance of that. And there you'll see the Route 6, the Route 1, the Route 34, 412 carry most of our riders. And then that's their on-time performance. Like the 6 you see there is 68%. The Route 1 is 69% on-time performance. The Route 34 is 74% on-time performance. The Route 400 is 77%, and the Route 12 is 73%. Then we have our overall on-time performance broken down by the highest on-time performance routes to the lowest on-time performance route, with the national average on-time performance being at 77%. And for November, we were at 72.3% on-time performance. This is another trend, 6-month trend slide. Right here, it shows you all 3 of our modes and its on-time performance over the past 6 months. As you see, streetcar has been pretty stable at around 99%, which is similar to a national average for streetcar. Then as you look at the next one is the gray line, is paratransit, usually around 98 or 99% on-time performance. As you see, in July, we started taking a dip down to 92.79%, and it's pretty much stabilized around that area. Also, the same for bus. In the blue line, you see a trend line of 78%. Sometime around July, going into August, we started taking a dip, and then we're currently at 72.33%. And this breaks down our trips, our number of completed trips versus missed trips. As you can see, for the month of November, we completed 99.63% of our trips. Only 0.37% of our trips were missed. So the full trips were 113 that we missed and 45 partial trips. And again, we completed 42,792 trips. And so now I ask Mr. Lafleur to come up, and he'll discuss maintenance with you.
Thanks, Bobby. Chair, members of the board, Ms. LeGrand, Justin Lafleur, Director of Fleet Maintenance. So for the month of November, the maintenance shop completed 96 bus inspections with 100% on-time performance. Our mean distance between failure trend has been trending up, and we were really close to our goal of 6,000 miles. We just missed it, 5,595 miles. And then our major mechanical failures, we have a goal of 15,000 miles between failures, and we just missed that one as well, 14,688 miles between major mechanical failures. So next, I'd like to turn it over to Richard Campbell, our interim safety officer.
Thank you, Justin. Good morning, Chair, Directors, Ms. LeGrand. My name is Richard Campbell, I'm interim safety officer, and I'll be presenting the safety performance report for the month of September, October, and November. If I could turn your attention to the second to right column, safety events. For the month of September, these are reportable safety events according to the Public Transportation Safety Agency Safety, so the PTASP, as required by the FTA. So we had 2 safety events in October. This is somebody that was injured on the vehicle resulting in an accident. So in September, we had 2 events. As you can see all the way to the left, there was a result of 1 fatality. For the month of October, we did not have any transported reportable accidents. And for the month of November, you can see we had 2 as well, okay? If I move you over to the middle column where you see the injuries, for September we had 4 injuries. These are people that were transported but not due to an accident. So maybe somebody that got hurt on the vehicle or fell off the vehicle or something of that matter. So in September we had 4 events. In October we had 2 events, and in November we had 3. And this is for the fixed route. Change the slide. The next slide is talking about the paratransit and the streetcar. The top portion as well, if you look to the second to right column, we had 1 accident resulting in injury, okay? For September, October, we had 1 as well, and in November, we did not have any, okay? Looking at the injuries, in September, we did not have any. October, we did not have any. In November, we had 1 for the paratransit. And then final category, If you look down at the bottom of the slide, we have one safety event in September for the streetcar. We did not have any in October, and we had one as well in November, resulting in one injury in September and no injuries in October or November. If I move on to the next slide, the final slide that I'm presenting is the compliance training. If I draw your attention to the summary total at the bottom, the training department facilitated 62 training classes, resulting in 476 employees trained for a total of 1,106 hours. Those categories are the quarterly safety training. So these are trainings that we do every quarter. We analyze trends and cater that training to whatever trends are happening. So if we have, mirror accidents or something of that nature, then that's what we cater the training. We did the training for bus operators, paratransit operators, streetcar operators, as well as maintenance people, and our controller supervisors and road supervisors. And the final category, you see we did fire warden training. So we are in the process of revamping our fire training, or what's the word I'm looking for? The emergency training. So fire drills, such of that nature. Okay, thank you. Questions?
Okay, any questions? Director Williams.
I don't, I don't have any questions. I just want to make a statement, say thank you for the follow-through from Mr. Edwards as well as Mr. LaFleur, yourself. I appreciate the attention you placed on the question and returned it pretty quickly. So thank you so much for the details, and we can see where the work has been done and also the opportunities we have, and then the follow-through with the training. So thank you all for your input and attention to the matter.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Director Knight.
And again, thank you. I also like to look on the fire training, on that, as you just showed up there, only one training, one class for fire training?
So what the fire warden training is, basically we're finding department heads and key people in certain departments, and they're gonna be in charge of making sure we have a head count, everybody gets out of the building. So as far as the exit training, we're gonna do training and fire drills so that everybody gets out of the building and understands what to do in an emergency. But the warden's gonna be the person to check the bathrooms, to make sure that that area is clear.
Yeah, well, the drivers and the patrons on the buses and everything, the driver being in charge of that bus or whatever, have any training been thought of or did, just like a lot of the other stuff?
Absolutely. In training, most of the operators went through TSI training, so that is training through the U.S. Department of Transportation, and they're taught in emergency management what to do in the case of a fire or some sort of act, whether it's violence or an accident or anything like that. Yes, the operators are trained exactly what to do in the situation on the vehicle. The fire drill training is more for the employees in the building, so they know how to exit, they know where to go, how far away from the building they need to get, what the situation is, and that's the training that we're talking about.
Okay. We did have one bus catch a fire, right?
Absolutely. Some time ago, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Edwards, could you come back up? I got a couple questions for you. You commented on the good presentation. Thank you for the additional graphs. That helps. You did comment about a flood day. What was that?
Not the flood day, I'm sorry, that was the hurricane day.
Hurricane day. Okay. All right. Okay. That's what I thought it was. On the on-time performance in the OTPs, why the degradation? I mean, it went down pretty significant. Any thoughts, any ideas what's happening with that?
Yes, sir. We are currently looking into that. One thing that we can put our hands on right now is a pattern of school openings. When the schools open up in this area, we've seen a trend of our on-time performance going down a little bit due to an increase in ridership and things like that. And there are some other things we're looking at, schedule adjustments and things, working with Mr. Alvarado's team to see if we can adjust some schedules. And I know he's going to be talking about the markup that we have coming in March that may be able to address some of those as well.
Last question. I thought a couple of months ago we talked about a reaction team, a cross-sectional team of associates. Is that still meeting? Are is it still in place, and how they coming along with their analysis?
Yes, sir. We actually met this past Friday. It's called the On-Time Performance Working Group.
Right.
So we met this Friday to discuss some of the bottom routes and how they were performing and what we could do to address those. And they came up with some great suggestions. There's a group of operators. So I was able to forward those suggestions over to our scheduling department for them to take a look at them.
Okay, I'd like to, I hope we continue with that, because it gives everybody some ownership, and it gives everybody a chance to play in the sandbox and get things fixed. Okay,
Correct.
cool. Thank
All
you
right.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I don't see any. Okay, thank you for your presentation. The next presentation is HART Marketing and Branding. Staff, who's doing that? Okay, you're recognizing. You are?
Good morning, Chair,
Good.
committee members, and Ms. LeGrand. My name is Kirk Michkowski, Manager of Creative Services at HART. Today I'll be presenting the HART logo and brand redesign. This was led by our consultant, Conversa. HART takes you there. HART's mission is to take people to the places that enhance their lives. And HART's vision is to be the highest customer-ranked mobility provider in the Tampa Bay region. Hillsborough Transit Authority, HART, was created in 1979 to provide transportation assistance in Hillsborough County 43 years ago. Today, more people than ever are discovering HART's network of transit options. Brand words. Some of the brand words that first came to mind are listed on the screen. The words HART, futuristic, motion, points A to B, innovative, and destination were some of the words that jumped out to us most to enhance the agency. Here is our current and original branding that we have right now. The color palette. Currently, HART has 2 colors, and the new logo and branding will have 3 colors. And this color palette represents Tampa Bay, the colors of Tampa Bay that we thought. So the color navy, Tampa is Florida's largest open water estuary forming coastlines of Hillsborough County. The color navy signifies Hillsborough's tie to the water. HART's varied public transportation options enable the community to connect to many ways of Hillsborough's waterfront destinations. And the color, gold yellow, Tampa has about 246 days of sunshine per year. People seek Hillsborough County's sunshine, and HART strives to deliver the sunny disposition through the use of this brand color, which would be new for us. And the powder blue, light blue, along with the warmth and sun comes the blueness of the skies. This brand color excludes freshness, a nod to HART's commitment to reduce the CO2 emissions by 2026 that makes Hillsborough a cleaner place to live. Logo branding and concepts. This is our proposed logo number 1. So this logo, the logo shapes forms the H on the left. While the passenger is in motion, the icon could be a view of the city. The dark blue could be the buildings. The sun represents, the gold represents the sun, and the blue, light blue, the skies. And this would be the icon like on a social media. This would be the branding on the bus, but there will be no branding on the windows. This would be a web page design. Shelters. And the logo without the icon on the left. And this logo it's modern, simplistic, and bold, easy to recognize, and the yellow grabs the attention of the viewer. And with this logo, includes the same original blue colors that are familiar to the audience that already knows HART, the dark and light blue. Logo number 2. Lowercase logo types represent friendliness, ease, and relaxation. The logo shape curve emulates the side angle of the front of a bus in motion. This would be the social icon. The website design. Shelter. And then the logo 2, it's also modern, simplistic, and bold, easy to recognize, and the new color grabs attention, the gold, and then and it does include the same blues that everyone's familiar with, that knows HART, and the light blue also represents innovation, technology, and logo 3, which is our last logo. The heart shape represents quality customer service and experience from field employees. The 2 curves emulate the side angle of the front of the bus. This would be the social icon, the HART bus wrap. The website, HART takes you there. Shelters. And the logo without the icon. And again, the same with the last logo. It's modern, simple, easy to recognize. And then and it has the same colors that everyone's used to, the 2 blues. So we're not changing much with that, so everyone will recognize it. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of staff on this issue? Yeah. Director Knight, you're recognized.
Good morning. Thanks for the presentation. Want to know, what is the deadline as far as the logo campaign you're doing?
I don't.
If I may. Director Knight, we don't have a specific deadline. What we were working with the consultant was they did a presentation, I want to say last month, on the color scheme and adding the gold color to our color palette. So this is just the next step in the process to present to you the logo, and hopefully from this committee have a conversation, and then of course take it to the full board for the full board to have a conversation, with the expectation to land on a logo that we feel comfortable with as we do our rebranding. The rebranding will include the new logo.
Okay, because the reason I asked, because Tampa have a rich history, even the artists, different ones around, if you look at the different areas, and possibly maybe a short campaign or something like that, and maybe a little reward or whatever like that. I'm saying some ideas or something like that. I like those, but Maybe if it's something like that, that's something that can really, come how we do different things, and then, also have a, different option from that angle.
Yes, definitely.
Think
We can
about
take
it.
a look at that.
Okay.
Director Williams.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I wanted to ask a few questions. Are we discussing HART, the logo, from the standpoint of we're going to use capital letters or small letters? Because I see differences in the
Yeah,
logos.
there were just different options.
Right.
That were, so it's all open still.
Okay,
These are just proposals.
okay. Some are capital and some are small, and then they're colored and some are white. Are those part of the decisions that are being made?
Right.
Okay, and then I don't recall seeing what are those, the hyphens or the dots? Or they're not dots, the hyphen or they look like step marks. Yeah, the dash lines. This is the first time I've seen the dash lines. So are they included in the logo?
The dash lines on the wraps, or?
Yes, maybe if you
think that
could
was
go
just
back,
artwork.
and look at one of the slides that has the dash lines on them, they're yellow.
Yes.
Okay, that's the first time I've seen those dash lines. Are those included in the logo?
No,
Or is
they
that-
are not. It's more on the wraps and other things, just to show like routes and stuff, like a subliminal route design.
So they won't be on the logo,
Not on the actual logo, correct.
but will they be on the bus or included as the wrap?
Yes.
Okay, so, because they
As-
signify
as-
part of, to me, they look like they're signified as part of the logo.
It was just part of the wrap design, to tie everything in,
But what do they represent?
like road movement.
Okay, so I would just think that if they are they're gonna be included as part of the logo, then they would have a definition or, some type of explanation as to what they mean on the logo. And I consider them steps, and you said that they could be road, to look as if
Right.
road. So we want the public to know exactly what they mean, if they're gonna be included in the
Okay.
logo itself.
Yes. We can make
Commissioner,
that clear.
Director Kemp.
And then
I'm sorry.
the last one, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
The last one is the HART, you said we will not cover the windows.
Right, all the wraps, we're gonna leave the windows unwrapped.
Well, where are every graph shows the windows are covered.
Right, so on the next proposed concepts, there'll be no artwork on the glass. The logo and everything will be either on the bottom or on top.
Okay, so perhaps we could see an example of
Yes.
the logo not on the window?
Correct.
So that we would
Next time
be
we will
able
do
to
that.
get an idea of what that would look like
Definitely,
with those dashes.
yes.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
I
you're
appreciate it. I'll hand it over to you, Chair Kim.
Thank you, and those were great comments, Director Williams. I think those were great takeaways. I am anxious, as it's no surprise that I really want the wraps that we're doing now. I'm anxious for change and rebranding, so I'm very, very committed and excited for that. But I'll just, a few takeaways here. I think HART definitely needs to be in capital letters, unquestionably. I don't know what you're feeling about the little dots, but I think it looks better, or the little dashes. I think it looks better without that in the design, period. Cleaner, nicer, better design. I think those were the comments, and I think it would be important to see them as they're going to be, which is, I guess on the lower part of the buses. So those would just be my comments with regards to this.
I appreciate everyone's comments. Yeah, we will take these comments and show you new proposed artwork.
Any other questions? I do have a couple of questions/comments. What, since this is basically your dress rehearsal for the board meeting, what's the source of the inspiration for these? How did this come about? I mean, who met? Was there public input? Was there just professional designer input?
Well, it was from our agency, Conversa.
Okay.
And they met with staff and, you know, it was trying to get a Tampa Bay feel with the colors and stuff like that.
If I may?
Yes.
They also did a survey. So there was a survey that went out throughout the organization to get feedback. They asked several questions of the staff, as Kirk mentioned, to see, you know, what they think of our current brand, where do they think we should go. And from that conversation or from the survey results, the consultant then came up with the concepts for the colors and also the concept for the different logos.
Okay. All right, good. Then let's see if we can include that type of information in the overall next presentation, so that otherwise it's too antiseptic. We don't know the genesis of it, and it would help to make a better decision. I too like the capital letters, and I also like the second design, but that's another discussion. Anyway, thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
We're moving forward. We have the March 2023 proposed network redesign update. Mr. Omar Alvarado, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair, committee members, Ms. LeGrand. This morning, I'll take you guys on a quick update on our service changes, our proposed redesign for March. We met last month, and there were a couple of follow-ups from the board meeting last month, so I'll give some feedback on those. Then we'll get into the public comments and how that process went, and then we'll get into some of the updates based off of that comment and talk next steps after that. So the first follow-up I was asked about was the costing for Fletcher Avenue. So our initial proposal, which we're still going through with, is the change on the east end of Fletcher to split the route into essentially a fixed route on the east side and then a mobility on demand zone on the west side. So the current cost for the routing as it stands is roughly $1.5 million a year. Flipping that from a fixed route to a fixed route and an on-demand reduces the cost for just the fixed route portion down to roughly $1 million, and the mobility on-demand side to roughly $300,000, giving us a savings annualized of about $200,000 a year. So in terms of similar deployments, in terms of mobility on-demand, here's just kind of a quick layout of different places and cities across the country that do this kind of on-demand model, San Antonio being one of the more successful ones, operating about 9,000 trips on a monthly basis, and they have kind of the same model, an app-based model where you can either call the call center or on your phone book a trip, and you can get a trip to that mobility on-demand zone and even create transfers between that and the fixed route system. This is just kind of a very simple high level of what some of the technical capabilities will be when we go to a mobility on-demand kind of model. Very easy, straightforward. If you've booked a trip on Uber or Lyft, you can natively understand how to book a trip on whichever, any of these services on the mobility on-demand side. Next is the analysis of the Route 1, which was a follow-up from the last board meeting. Commissioner Hudson had asked for just some additional data on the removal of the downtown kind of loop on the Route 1. So on average, we're looking at 112 riders over 7 stops that would be eliminated by that loop. It's really 4% of the total ridership. You see there 14 to 15% of our boardings happen at the transit centers, with really the other 65 happening along the route. That said, we are not going to move forward with this change. We did find an alternative that'll keep that loop and allow us to do something else on a different route as well, so we stay at what our goal is, a net zero cost, no additional vehicles, drivers, et cetera. Next, I'll talk a little bit about our public engagement. As you guys saw during the board meeting, it's really been kind of a year-long process in terms of engagement, some internal engagement with our employees, so our staff on the operations and maintenance side, including dispatchers, supervisors, and the operations leadership, and operators as well. So we spent this past week plus meeting with our customers. We had about 200 hours of on-vehicle time where we had our marketing, planning, and scheduling teams go out and just meet with people on the vehicles, help them take surveys, talk to them about the service changes, and help get some feedback on those service changes. Additionally, we had 3 sessions a day over a 5-day period at the Marion Transit Center. We did some bilingual sessions as well in Spanish last Monday and Tuesday. Beyond that, we've also set up some open houses for our operators. So we were able to catch every shift, early morning, midday, and later in the evening, to again get some of their feedback as well. We sent out an email blast. About 8,500 emails have gone out plus. We had about 1,200 surveys that were started. A little over 25% of those are completed, which is not uncommon, I will say that. So in total, we had almost 260 hours of engagement just during this part of the process. So some of the things that came out from the surveys that the customers filled out is more frequency is still the priority. You know, that is still the #1 priority that we're seeing from our customers. In terms of how people feel about the service changes as they were originally proposed, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. You know, I'd say about 30% agree to some level, 20% to 30% are kind of in the middle where it doesn't either affect them or they don't really have much of a strong feeling. And I'd say 35 disagreed with about 5 somewhat disagreeing as well. So really it's like a 30-30, 40 split. I'd say a good amount of those disagreements with the service, we did go ahead and make those changes based on some of that feedback that we got as well in terms of some of the things that people disagreed with. So this is some of, in the transit center, we also set up system maps where you could go and put a sticky note with some of the feedback or some of your comments in addition to the surveys as well. And these were some of the areas that people were really strong and adamant about. No changes on the one. Some people agreed with the proposal and were really looking forward to the frequency on some routes, and others didn't want to see the elimination. I'd say the elimination is the one where we got the most amount of negative feedback, the 25LX going down to the Air Force Base. So next, the update. So with this feedback, again, internally and externally, we were able to go ahead and make some changes. First, I want to just show you guys what the initial changes were. So we were proposing more frequency on 7 corridors. We were looking at new services along Slight, Spruce, Bullard Parkway, better connections, more coverage, more door-to-door service, and just some operational efficiency so we can improve the fare box recovery and also the on-time performance. And we were also proposing no changes on the paratransit side as well. Obviously, part of doing a net zero change means that there's some cost to that. So our initial proposal included cutting early morning trips and cutting late night trips, less frequency along Gun Highway, which would have taken that corridor from every 30 to every 60, and obviously the elimination of the 25 and tapering some routes in terms of their frequency later at night. So after this public engagement process, we came back with a revised network. So instead of 7 corridors with 30-minute frequency or better added, we're going down to 3 corridors where we'll be able to do that. So that's the 5, the 19, and the 32. We still have 3 areas with new services, even though Bullard's not going to be one of those areas. So the 33, the mobility on demand zones we'll have. And then obviously the 5 mobility on demand zones that we spoke about earlier, which is the downtown, the uptown circulator. And again, just a caveat on downtown that is still contingent on us finalizing funding. But these other 4 aren't. So obviously the uptown circulator, the East Fletcher, and the South County, circulator as well. We're still focusing on frequency. We're still focusing on connection and the coverage in the places we can. We're going to do less trimming. And then one of the big changes as well is none of the routes are going to see any changes in terms of the early morning and the late nights. So in terms of some of the feedback we got was, hey, if my 4:30 trip is gone and I need to connect to the 1, how am I going to get to work now? Or same vice versa. If I had an 11:30 trip and you're getting rid of that, how am I going to get back home? So that part of the service change isn't happening anymore, and that's really one of the reasons you see instead of 7 places where we're adding every 30 minutes, it's only 3. And then we're merging some services, so we're putting together a new Route 11. There's some duplicity with the Route 10, so we're really just turning that into one route now, the Route 11. And there's only one split that's preserved. So as you saw as well during the initial service change proposal, we had 4 or 5 routes that were expected to split. We're just going to split one now instead of those other routes as well. And the last thing I'll talk about is our Title VI methodology. So for the board meeting in January, we'll present to you our finalized Title VI analysis. And this is really just what our methodology is for Title VI. And at a high level, it's a disparate impact, it's anything over 15%. So if we're negatively affecting low-income and minority populations over 15%, our task is to look for steps to minimize, avoid, or reduce those impacts in the places we can. And that is it. Any questions?
Yes, this seems to have changed a lot. So I didn't even see it listed there. What are these 5 mobility on demand areas?
So we have one now, which is South County. We have the Uptown and Downtown, which we spoke about before, and we have East Fletcher. The only one that's being added is the one in Tampa City, which is the 17.
You have East Fletcher now?
East Fletcher was in the original
So,
proposal.
and are you talking about HART Flex in
Correct.
South County?
Correct.
Okay, so here's what, I know you showed all those other places, Dallas, San Antonio, with all this. Here's my issue with this. This affects the budget, and I still haven't gotten the answers, and I don't think I understand exactly how this is going to happen, because for those who aren't aware, we did have on-demand services in the past through HART. They were paid for totally by FDOT. And it was, for a 3-mile or under ride, it was $16 to the servicer, the private servicer. We're talking about, I guess, doing these through HART Flex. There were lots of complaints. The phone calls didn't come into us. It went to the service provider. I heard all kinds of complaints about how service never came. There's also that issue that it can blow up your costs if you're just saying you're going to do this. And I don't understand. I don't see a complete vision here and an explanation, including financing, about how we do this. I mean, I know there's the app, but how much did you say? 300,000 for one of them?
And that's based off of the hours for the Fletcher one in particular, which is the follow-up that we talked about. But yeah, it's one vehicle. So the cost of one paratransit vehicle, or sorry, HART Flex vehicle being out there for 12, 13, 14 hours is $300,000 a year.
Okay, so there will, at any one given time, there'll just be one vehicle available.
For that particular area, which was a very low ridership area, that we're basically still providing service instead of just flat out cutting fixed route service.
You're
Correct.
talking about the South County route?
I'm talking about East Fletcher, but South County is
East
also
Fletcher?
one vehicle as well.
Okay, so what I'd like to see develop for each of these, I think we have to understand what exactly we're doing here. And, I'm thrilled to have on-demand service, but we saw it blow up here hugely in terms of the cost being put on HART and right now we know we have budget challenges and we can't even service some of the regular routes we need. So what I'd like to understand is on every one of these services, I'd like a breakdown. If we're going to say 300,000, we're going to say, okay, that's for one, HART Flex van, 14 hours a day, on 7 days a week, or whatever it is. I want that clearly here so that, and I want guarantees that it's not going to go beyond that cost in the budget. And what happens if we start getting a lot of calls? We are going to have a lot of complaints that we're not really fulfilling service. So I think this needs to be more fleshed out for the board to responsibly engage in how this moves forward in each of these cases. I think that's just really important because these things can blow up hugely in terms of costs, and I don't want to see that happen and a shift away from our core services to these services, because this can be much, much more expensive than providing a regular route.
Yeah, so there's a couple restrictors. And again, for the board meeting, I can update this and provide that level of detail. So first of all, for something like East Fletcher, it's stop to stop. We're not going to take you anywhere in the county. We're going to take you particularly in the part of the 33 route that we've eliminated to any of those stops. So it's bi-directional, which is a benefit to the customer. It's on demand. But we're also talking about area that's very low ridership. So in your scenario, if we get to a place where we're completely overloaded with demand, well, that's a case to go back to fixed route for that corridor. But the reason we're going to mobility on demand on some of these corridors is because of the low demand. So it's an opportunity for us to still provide that coverage without putting a 40-foot vehicle out there.
So what I'd like to see, I think, is for each of these, a full explanation, a full budget, a full look at what services will be provided, what we're guaranteeing. I want to make sure that this is all coming through us and provided by us, that we know that if, service is not being rendered, or if we don't, people give up on calling or something like that, that it's through us, not through any private service. And I think we have to know how much we're on the hook for here, and if it exceeds that, or if there's issues like what's the fix or what we're going to do in terms of that.
Yeah, that's not a problem. I can provide that level.
Okay, I think we need to do it for each one of these areas so that we understand.
Sure.
That'd be great.
No problem.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I do. Okay. The 33, how will this work, the 33 change? What are the mechanics of it? I work at Leslie Controls. I got a bus stop right across the street from the building, okay? What will be the methodology going forward?
Yeah, so you'll still be able to get picked up at those stops in the east part of the 33 where it's now a mobility on demand zone. But what will happen instead is you'll either be able to call our call center and they'll be able to book a trip for you, or you can do it through an app that you'll have on your phone that you can just load on your phone. So you'll call up the day before, you'll say, hey, I want to get picked up, at this particular stop. You'll give a time in which you want to get picked up at, and we'll deploy the vehicle that goes out there and picks you up. It's going to be one vehicle that's essentially circulating that area to do those pickups. We'll be able to also create time transfers between the actual 33 bus and that zone. So if you are trying to transfer back to the fixed route network, you can do that easily as well.
What will be the end point? I mean, you got Hidden River, you got Telecom Park.
Yeah, we'll go to the end of the line to Hidden River, to the park and ride over there.
Okay. Then, same questions. What's the ridership for that area now between East Fletcher?
Yeah, you're looking at 4 or 5 passengers per hour right now.
That's what it is?
Yeah, it's very low.
Cool. I thought there was no change going to be to the 48.
No change to the 48? Yeah, that's correct. There won't be a change to the 48
I just was
anymore.
confused by the commentary in the slides. You had feedback posted. 2 of them in particular were saying that the 48, the changes were going to make it difficult for them.
Yeah, the original proposal had some tapering at the ends of the day for the 48, so that's what that customer is referring to, that early morning trip was going to get moved up by an hour. So those were some of the comments that we got on some of those routes, and that's what we went back to say, hey, let's keep kind of the span of the network the same, and if we've got to get rid of some of these increased frequencies, at least in the short term, then, for the sake of connecting to jobs, it makes sense.
Okay, that's fair. And then last one, why the change on 39?
Same thing, we got feedback internally in terms of just a lot of pushback, keeping it the way it is right now, and, it's something I think we can look at for the future, but I think for right now, just understanding that we may need to change running times on that route and things of that sort, it's best to just kind of leave it alone and take advantage of that savings to do something else, like, additional frequency on the 19.
Okay, so, well, I agree with what Director Kemp said. We need to, before we can take this to the full board, I think we need to have a better understanding as to what the financial implications of all these are going to be.
So I will say that, like, the entire redesign is predicated on a zero-sum cost increase. And I'm happy to provide those details for sure, but everything we've gone throughout this entire process has been to keep the budget the same as it is today. That includes peak vehicles, drivers, everything from soup to nuts. But again, we can provide that additional detail.
Well, with finance and audit, we need to make sure that we understand the methodology, we understand your approach to the calculation, and we're on the same page, so that we can reaffirm to the full board that it is truly a net sum zero game.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So as it relates to next steps, we're going to, I've taken notes, I know staff's taken notes as well, so we're going to provide the requested information. As it relates to the board meeting in January, is it acceptable to present this presentation with the updates at the full board meeting to have the conversation?
I think so.
Okay, so that's what we'll plan to do.
No,
Okay,
you want it
Director
ahead of
Knight.
time?
Well, it would be good to have them ahead of time, but I just want to make sure that they are, I just don't want this to blow up and, take resources that, I just mean in terms of the money, the costs, in the future. So to have it mapped, like you asked Director Schisler about, where the stops were and everything, to have like, on each one of these, a clear mapping of the area, a clear understanding of what the costs, what people pay, what, the implications are for the system, what happens, that was helpful. One van, but and what happens if we start getting more calls? And because I just don't want, it to start blowing up into these costs where we promise this very exclusive service that's more costly and impacts our, core-based services. You know that I've expressed this many times. So I just want to understand on each of these systems exactly what the limits are, the scope, the costs, how we will, provide that service, and what we'll do if that service, we did have some issues with this service before in the university area. It was $3, ended up being something that was for those using it cost prohibitive. Then we lowered it to $1. In Brandon, we had this service, and the stop was the mall. So people were calling for all kinds of service and getting to the mall, which is where the HART stop is, but it was a trip to the mall. Maybe that's an okay way to use it if we understand that. I just think that we need to understand all the scope, all the implications, and all the services. And I think other systems have probably more resources to work this out, but I'm pleased to have a go at it. I want to make sure that those people that aren't having service, which is the idea of this, continue to get service. I just want to know what the limitations and what the service will be and how it will be monitored and implemented.
Yeah, I think giving you an essential area service map with the stops and some of the financials will help answer a lot of the questions you have.
And that was just to add on clearly, when we bring it back, what I think the whole board needs to know before, at least me, before I'm okay going forward with it.
Okay, Director Knight, you recognize.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Again, and I agree with my comrade that we get more information, not take it to the board until some of the things, concerns is addressed. Then it go to the board, not even for discussion before. Thank you.
I'm trying to remember the schedule that you gave last time. What was the plan on taking it to the
Yeah,
board?
so if we can't take
I
it to
thought
the
was
board,
March, but that's okay.
if we can't take it to the board in January, then we can't move forward until probably about April with the service change.
Well, I would do it right the first time.
Yeah,
We
no,
don't
no,
have to go back and
absolutely.
do it again.
But just keep in mind contractually, we have to have 3 markups a year, so just, we'll have to kind of reimagine that entire calendar for the year.
Say that again?
So contractually for with RATU, we have to have 3 markups, what's called markups a year. So if we move this to April, we'll probably have to look at an August and a November. So I'll provide that level of detail as well in terms of if we want to move it back to April, which understood, but just what impact it'll have on the rest of the calendar for the year as well.
What kind of complexities will that add?
It'll certainly shorten the timeline for our 3rd markup of the year, which means, it'll crush down the time we have to, update any street signage and things of that sort. So it would keep any changes we do in November potentially pretty minimal.
Okay. All right, well, let's keep this issue in mind as we move forward with future markups, that, given circumstance changes through the election and so forth, we're going to need that type of information ahead of time so that we don't hit this crunch going forward.
Yeah,
So
understood.
make that part of your overall checklist for the financial analytics, so that the finance committee can bless it before we send it to the board.
And we can get those to you pretty quickly. I mean, as we've gone, like I said, as we've gone through this entire process, that's been kind of, the North Star, right? Like, there's all these requests, there's all these changes that are requested, but to what level can we do them? And there are many things we kept off of the list for that exact point. But point taken, we'll make sure we provide that detail ahead of time.
Okay. All right, thank you. Did you have anything else, Ms. LeGrand? Okay. Anybody else, any comments or questions? Okay, cool. Thank you. All right, thank you, Ms. Alvarado. Good presentation. Committee action items. The items for review by the Joint Committee, recommendation for approval to the full Board of Directors. 5A, the committee to form a recommendation to the HART Board of Directors to authorize Nelson Nygaard and HART staff to implement a system redesign resulting from the comprehensive analysis of the HART network and public outreach activities for Board Resolution R-2022-12-85 of December 5th, with service changes to be implemented on March 5th. I don't know that we can do that, because we're just discussing that now. So we'll just
Table that one.
just table that for now. Tabling it, what does that, tabling, is it the right terminology, or?
That's fine, we can table for right now, allow those revisions to be made.
Okay.
And then it'll be placed on the agenda when it's appropriate.
Okay, very good. Just to make sure we didn't stub our toe on that one. All right. So we then go to 5B. There's a write-up and a proposed resolution to form a recommendation of the HART Board to authorize CEO to award a 3-year contract to Standard Insurance Company for employer-paid group term and life and group long-term disability employee benefits on a not-to-exceed amount of $992,004. Does staff have any questions regarding this? Director Knight.
Yes, was there any other groups, did they send out to get from other insurance companies some bids? That's the best, or do we have anything to see?
Yes. Ms. Zickerfus, if you can approach and provide Director Knight with an overview of how we got to this point.
Good morning.
Good morning. Kathy Zickerfus, Director of Procurement, for the record. We sent out on September 27th, we sent out a request for proposal. For the services, 5 proposals were received. One of the offers that we received was not responsive and not given further consideration. The 4 other offers were evaluated. So the intended offer, the successful offer, actually provides us 19% savings from what years past have been, 19% annual savings.
Okay, so, hang on a second. You said this represents a 19% savings over previous policy periods?
Over previous policy,
Okay,
right?
okay.
Right.
All right, thank you. Yes.
Is there-
Director Knight, you're still on.
Is there any papers that we could, if it moved forward, that we can look at before that meeting, where they're gonna make the full board will vote on it? I'd like to see some comparative, something that I can look at before the meeting, if it get that far.
Yeah, I'll have to look at it should be in the write-up, in the action item. All of this information should be in the action item write-up.
Director Knight, if you check on page 101 of the section 5, tab B, if you go to 5B in the tab, and the number in the bottom of the page says 101, and that's the write-up associated with this procurement. And it also, on the second page, it shows the points and how they were awarded. So if you require additional detail, we can definitely get that for you.
I'm in reference to the papers, other ones that bid it. Can we have something on that specifically? And I'm looking at the one with the 101 at the bottom and 101 at the test. I see that.
So your request is to see all the
I'd
bid
like to.
packets that were received?
Exactly.
Okay. You'll be supplying those to everybody before the meeting, I assume?
Yes, so that's the proposals. You would like to see all the proposals received? I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Yes, ma'am.
Sure will.
Okay. All right. That way staff, that way the committee will have the opportunity to review the way it was calculated and the final decision made. Okay. In the meantime, we need to forward this to the full board. We can do that. So is there a motion to recommend the HART Board of Directors authorize CEO to award a 3-year contract to Standard Insurance? And this is strictly not to approve it, but to move it to the full board for full decision. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Can I,
Pardon me, go ahead, yes. Ms.
just, again, I'm sorry but the, what does delaying this do, just to understand for a second?
What's the renewal period?
We're going to we can do a month-to-month with our current provider.
Okay.
Yeah, so if it doesn't go until the February board for approval.
Then you just extend it for 1 month?
We'll extend it
and
for a month.
Till.
Correct.
Ms. Mandel, I think you had your hand raised.
And you, it's totally within the authority to go ahead and delay this for a month, since we know we can, to provide that additional information with the bid packets. I just want everybody to keep in mind that once you've gone through that bid process in compliance with the procurement manual, that's the process that needs to be followed. So if we get to a place, and not about these specifically, but generally, there's some concern or question as to how that bid numbers were decided, then the action would need to be tailored to the process in your bid packet, because we don't want to create another issue down the line. So I just want to make that statement for the record. It's appropriate to delay it. I'm presuming that there's, it's both items, because they seem, I guess it's just the one item. But just generally, when you're dealing with procurement, we have to be cognizant of following that process.
Does Ms. Williams.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, even if it moved forward, when we got the packets and looked at the way they were rated, we still have the right to refuse, right?
You can turn the contract down. We just can't be in the middle of a bid recalculating at this level. Like, you have to just send it back.
Exactly,
And-
right.
And I just wanted to make that clear.
Yes, that's clear.
Send it back to procurement.
Correct.
Right.
You would, your authority is to accept or reject. Your authority
Exactly.
isn't to recalculate.
Okay.
That was my understanding.
My only concern is, how do I word this? Is this time sensitive on the next agenda? Do we have any issues with if we push it back a month?
What I'm
Other than the-
understanding is that you can go to a month-to-month contract.
Other than the renewal, there's no Robert's Rules of Orders issues with this?
That's
being-
correct.
Oh, no, we can go ahead and just continue it out to the next committee meeting to provide that information, to which you can then make it a recommendation, because that's all you're doing at this juncture, is making that recommendation to go to the board. We can delay it, go ahead, well, it's really continuance, to the next meeting, so it remains on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay.
With the request to receive the additional information, and then for a recommendation at the next meeting.
Okay, does that work for everybody? Okay, all right. Then that way we have an opportunity to look at that. All right, cool.
Committee
All
Member
right.
Castor has her hand raised. Committee
Oh,
Chair.
I'm sorry, Mayor.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
That's okay. I just want to ensure that this won't have any negative impact on this particular bid. I know we can go month to month on the current policy, but it doesn't have any impact on this particular company's bid, correct?
The only thing that I would add is that with every solicitation, there's a firm offer period whenever they submit their offer. And so I would have to look at that and see if we exceed that firm offer period, then the offer would have the opportunity to either honor their pricing or not.
Can you let us know
Can
on
we
that?
get that date by the end of this meeting?
Yes, I'll go get that right now.
Okay, good. Okay, cool.
Okay, thank you.
Good point. Okay, based upon what she comes back with, we'll delay that, we'll table that till the next meeting.
Chair, there is an active motion on the floor,
Right.
though.
Point,
Okay, we better,
I was-
then we need to rescind your second and rescind your motion, or mayor's motion.
Why don't we just table the motion, leave it on the table for right now?
Okay.
Go to the next item, and then bring it back up after she's answered that
Okay,
question.
we'll do that. We'll table the motion. Okay, thank you, Danielle. Next are discussion items for the joint committee meeting. First is general counsel procurement. Ms. Julia Mandel, you're recognized.
Thank you. I believe you received a memorandum from David Smith related to this item, and I think there were some other memos that had gone out as it relates to this item. There is a request from procurement to go ahead and proceed forward with general counsel procurement process. Obviously, as one of the potential recipients of a procurement, we can't get involved in that part of the discussion. That being said, what we're recommending is to go ahead and table and hold off on the procurement process, because I think there does need, as we described earlier, a bigger conversation about the provision of legal services, both general counsel from an outside perspective, your internal counsel, and other outside counsel that you use, say, for example, for personal injury and for employment. And so what we're recommending is to have a discussion prior to putting out the procurement, and perhaps, given the number of questions that I think really need to be delved into, and some significant policy questions as to how you're obtaining your legal services, I would recommend that we put it on for a workshop item. I don't know, and that's really for the full board, not just for this committee. So what I'm suggesting we do is to go ahead and I will continue this particular item to the full board item for the purposes of, under the general counsel reports, having that additional conversation with the full board to schedule a workshop on that particular item. So that way, because I know you're also looking at your calendar as well, so that will allow us to have a separate workshop on that particular item. And it could be just after a meeting that you're having, but that way we can have a presentation as to how legal services are provided, and then you really making some decisions about changing, or looking at your policy and making a decision about having a general counsel, whether or not that general counsel is in-house or out-of-house, having a board counsel that's out-of-house, or is a separate entity from your in-house counsel services, and how you're managing your counsel services in terms of not just general counsel services, but also procurement for your employment law and procurement for your personal injury claims. There's a variety of different ways to manage this. Every agency, given the complexities of the agency, so it's really important, and one of the things that David Smith and I have discussed, because both of us have done work at so many different agencies, both in the Hillsborough County area, both in-house and out-of-house, that every agency does have a nuance into how they're governed, what their governance structure looks like, and what it is they need in terms of what they're trying to accomplish. So really does need to be analyzed on the way your agency is structured and how you want those legal services provided. So I would really recommend that we put aside at least an hour for it, so that we can have that conversation, maybe an hour and a half. And I don't want to take up too much time, but I think it is actually incredibly important moving forward for us to have that discussion.
Okay.
If we need a motion to that effect, I think, I definitely think it's not, that we shouldn't be discussing this at this time, the posture we're in. And I think we need much more thoughtfulness about how we would move forward, or what the structure would look like. This is a big decision. So if I need a motion to do that, to workshop this, or.
A motion be appropriate.
Well, I was thinking that we would go ahead, and I can bring that up, and we can actually motion to move this over to the general counsel's report at your full board meeting, so I can raise the issue, and that at that moment in time, we could schedule a date for that, because I think we need to put it off a little bit while we're dealing with other issues. But I want to get something on the calendar as soon as we can, so that way it doesn't get buried in other items. Because first of all, you are getting to the end of your general counsel's contract, and I think you're also getting the end of your other attorney services contract. So we do want to look at this probably, in the February, March timeframe at the latest, so that way there's sufficient amount of time to be able to do whatever procurements are appropriate, but also to change your policy if we need to change your policy.
I'm assuming your
So
motion
that's my
was to that.
motion.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to move the discussion to a board meeting. Do we have a second? Okay, we have motion second. Danielle, roll call, please.
Committeemember Castor?
Yes.
Committeemember Kemp?
Yes.
Committeemember Knight?
Yes.
Committee Chair Schisler?
Yes?
Committeemember Williams?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Was that it?
I was just saying thank you.
Okay. Ms. Zickerfuss, you have an answer for us on the other issue?
I do. The proposals were due October 25th, and there's a 120-day firm offer period. So the firm offer period
So
goes
we're
through
good to
January
February.
25th.
Yeah, so we're good to
Thereabout.
February. Okay, good. All right, so then, with that information, we'll go ahead and table this until the next Finance Committee meeting, and then prepare that to bring it to the board for afterwards, a recommendation to the board.
If I'm clear, the 120 days it ends like January 25th,
Right, the end of
not
January.
February.
So when is your next committee meeting,
okay.
I guess is the
I'm
question.
sorry, I counted wrong. It's,
I know.
when is our next committee meeting?
Our next committee meeting would be January
23rd.
23rd, but it won't be approved until our next board
That'd be in
meeting, which would be in February.
'Cause it would have to be
So we would meet the next committee meeting date, but not the next board meeting date.
Why is it so long for that board meeting? Usually the first of the month.
Well, the board meeting is
It's
in
January
I know January,
Ninth.
usually
It's It's January
The
9th.
first Monday is the second, so why can't it be the 9th?
It is the 9th.
It is the 9th.
The
I
board
thought you
meeting.
said the
is
20,
now.
I thought you said the
No,
20.
no, the next finance committee meeting's the 25th.
Okay.
So we have two options. We can either push it on to the board meeting and let the board decide on the 9th, or we wait till the 25th, in which case, or the 20, whatever it is, and then we miss our window for the price.
Can that date be extended on that 120 day?
Here's my suggestion. My suggestion is, given that the price might increase after that time, why don't we go ahead and, without recommendation, move this item on to the January 9th meeting, have that information provided, and in the meantime, if you can find out if they'll extend that date for an additional 30 days, and that can be reported back, so that way you're not losing your price, potentially, but it gives some time to think about it, and if more time becomes necessary, we'll find out if we can get an extension.
Okay, that would work. Okay. Yes.
Well, I think as a point of order, I guess we have a standing motion
motion,
now, so we would just pass that motion and with that guidance.
Correct.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to second. Ms. Danielle, would you roll call, please?
So is that a substitute to Mayor Castor's motion?
No,
Just so
it stands as is.
Okay.
Yes.
Committee Member Castor?
Just to be clear, we're voting to take this to the January 9th board meeting with the additional information.
Correct.
With a caveat that see if the bid can be extended 30 days.
Correct.
Yes, I vote yes.
Committee
Yes.
Member Kemp?
Yes.
Committee Member Knight?
No.
Committee Chair Schisler?
Yes.
Committee Member Williams?
Yes.
The motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, very good, thank you. We've cleared all our motions now, right? So we can move to, okay, good. Okay, next we'll go to the sole source awards. Ms. LeGrand will report on the sole source awards and deviations from the requirements. of the
Committee
pers-
Chair, there is a secondary a discussion item. The calendar.
Oh, my bad, I apologize. Okay, item 6B is the 2023 HART Board / committee meeting schedule options. There are two options available. Do committee members have any comments or questions? Yes, Commissioner Kemp.
Yes, I know this was mentioned to me sometime some months ago, but I think typically these kinds of things where I've been on other boards that have even considered this, usually like do their calendars actually around July or August, and it's a lot of consultation involved, because I know for us at the county, there's a lot of meetings that we're required to be at, and the Tuesday option actually, at this point, interferes with, there's 4 county commissioners, and interferes with our land use meeting a number of times in the year. So I think it's not a bad idea to consider another time, but I think we need to, because of the timing of this, we need to just go with our Monday option, and perhaps we can start working on it, a little bit later, and think about maybe a Monday afternoon option. I do think it's not the best to have the 9 o'clock Monday morning, or maybe there are some other options, but I know the Tuesday option definitely doesn't work for most of the commissioners to a large extent, so, or to an important extent, I'll say.
Okay, Ms. Williams, she had her hand up for Ms. Williams.
Yeah, I just would like to say, I agree with the Monday meetings, but the other thing I want to make sure is that we have a schedule that allows us to hear recommendations or things that need to be taken to the board in enough time that we're not rushed or making a decision in the moment. And I think we have to do a better job at making thoughtful, quality decisions. And whether it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever day it is, we have to be more thoughtful in making those decisions. And so if we're in a position where we have to make a decision today and it's because it's going to expire or go to a month-to-month decision, we have to be much more thoughtful in 2023. So I just ask that we consider that as we look at the dates, and let's put some more governance behind the date and determine what actions we're going to consider, because I'm going to decline a vote going forward if we are forced to make a vote because if it's a matter of time and we have not prepared accordingly. Thank you.
Yeah, yes, Ms. Kemp.
I'll make a motion to approve, and this would be for the whole year, the 2023 Monday option. So just continue. I agree, it would take, that was kind of my point, was that it would take, months ahead of time and discussion by the board ahead of time, and then, to think about this. So I agree, and we wouldn't be going to a month to month if we approve general counsel could talk to this. We would be approving the whole year at this time.
Right.
And then in the future, we can talk about other options
Do we need a
for the following
motion
year.
on this? I think this is just for discussion for the board meeting.
Oh, yes, I
Yeah.
see discussion items. I
don't
didn't
know
know.
if we really need a motion.
Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Grant.
So just a couple of things. One, Director Williams, you're 100% accurate about giving the board more time. So if you recall at our meeting, I want to say, Ms. Zickerfus, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was either October, that we presented the entire procurement up until June, so that we would have enough time to have conversation. Now, granted, some of them, like this one that we just discussed, were closer, but moving forward, we should have several months before a contract actually expires to have conversations. Regarding specifically this calendar, it was put on the last agenda, but then we got some feedback to provide both options, send them out to the board members electronically, and then put it back on this committee agenda so we can have a conversation. However, from the discussions between that meeting and this meeting, Director Kemp is accurate. Most people felt that the Monday schedule was the best schedule to move forward with at this time. And I do think Director Kemp's suggestion of, as we go through the year, if there seems like there's opportunities to do something different, that we can bring it forward. But again, it was just put on the agenda as suggested at the last meeting so that everyone would have both options.
Thank you.
I think the one concern with them, and I'm okay with the Mondays, is sometimes a holiday, the forced Monday holidays could influence that, and then we get out of sync with the, we're having it the second or the third week, and, it's just all over the place. I prefer it a little bit later in the day, but that's just me personally. Okay. Everybody on the same page with this? Cool deal. All right. Ms. LeGrand will report on the sole source awards and deviations from the requirements of the procurement manual.
Yes. So Ms. Jackson is going to put it up on the screen, and you'll just see that for the month of our update year-to-date, we're at $677,000 in sole source awards. And then also, when you see the next report we also have is the task order contract monitoring, and that we have 2 task orders that are on-call task orders. So you'll see an A under the first section is for our architecture and engineering contract, task order rather. So right now, our year-to-date is, remaining budget is $2.6 million. It's, thank you, Ms. Jackson. $2.65 million is still available. And you'll see also on Table B, there isn't anything for FY23. I do have one caveat, though. We are working with HNTB. You'll see them under Task Order A. There were Task Order number 2. They were helping us with our bus and bus facility grant application. They did that last year. Right now, the RAISE grant application is open. We're doing the RAISE grant for the heavy maintenance facility. They still have budget remaining in that task order, so they're working with us to apply for the RAISE grant application. If they end up expending more dollars than was remaining in Task 2, you'll see that being added to task under our FY23 task order table. But that's why that table is not populated as yet, because we're still working on those dollars. The second task order that we have is for our bus transit infrastructure contract. So that's the contract that we use to put out bus shelters, pads, any of the other infrastructure related to our bus services. And you'll see here that we did have one task order in FY '23, and that's for $87,000, and we still have $4.8 million left in this on-call. Again, these were both awarded as task orders, so we only had the not-to-exceed dollar amount, but the individual task orders were not, a part of the approval as they come online. That's when we generate them. So we committed to making sure that you are aware of what moved forward during those time periods. So that's it for the update on those two.
Any questions? Yes.
Yes, I have a question about sole source awards, if we can go back to that for a second.
Sure.
And I know when I saw this, I noticed APTA on there. So I asked, it says peer review APTA, $20,000. And I asked what that was. And can you explain
Sure.
what that is?
Yes, so that was a peer review for our operations and maintenance assessment. So that's really to look at in detail how our operations and maintenance functions are serving us, opportunities to make improvements, opportunities to celebrate good things that we're doing. That peer review happened in November, so they're still gathering their notes to give us an update on that.
And that's what I understood, that nothing has been compiled at this time. I know that I was reading the report, 56 pages or something, of the 3 committees of peer reviews in creative loafing that from September 2021 that I had not known about. So I want to make sure that we have the written as well as a presentation on this peer review. We're paying $20,000 for it, and I think it's important information. And as I understand now, there's nothing in writing or nothing, final review that's been done, but it's important that this is presented to the board and that we, on a future item, and that is when this is released or when this information comes, that each of the board receives that information.
Yes, you did share that with me in our briefing, and I committed that we will do that, so thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Appearing to be none. Okay, thank you, Mr. Grant. I'm sorry.
Question.
Yeah, Director Knight.
Since the last meeting, has anything else came out that was directed to us as far as on the media, written, or anything in the news? Have you presented anything to us, submitted?
I know I sent through General Counsel the PowerPoint presentation from the APTA peer review, so you should have received a hard copy.
I'm talking about what Director Kemp just talked about, because I never got anything this weekend or the last several days pertaining to maybe something along with what's going on. And
Well, are we talking about the peer review from last year or this peer review? The one that's in,
what's going on with the board and the employees and everything?
You mean I'm sorry if I didn't mean to interrupt. You mean the investigation?
No, from Creative Lofton or anybody else, anything came out that perhaps we need to know about? Any literature?
I mean, I think a lot of the stuff that's been coming out in the media is the subject of is also the subject of the investigation. So I would suggest that we not have that conversation right now. But why don't I have Mr. Smith give you a call to further discuss with you where all that information is? Because he is taking the lead in terms of the general counsel. Okay? Thank you.
check with Mr. Smith, if there was a presentation distributed to board members, I do not believe I received it.
Let me check,
I
let
don't
me
think I
check
did.
with him. Let me
Okay.
check with him on that.
If he was
Because
gonna
he's
send
taking the
it
lead
out.
on that,
Okay.
those
I mean,
items.
I don't remember. I'll go back and look, but he may, I don't know that I got anything on that. Okay.
That may be where the questioning is coming from. So let me
Okay.
find that
Right.
information out and have him
Okay.
reach out to get that information
That'd be
out.
good.
Send the presentation to Mr. Smith.
I-
So he has
Okay.
it, so.
Let me
yes.
double check with him to
If,
find out
I'll
where
look
that is.
again, but if I'm wrong, I'll clarify the record, but I don't remember. Yes, Ms. Campbell.
I had also asked that all the board members be given that presentation, but
Right.
it is because it is electronically available on Creative Loafing
Yeah, I
in the
saw
article,
it
and you
there.
can go
Yeah,
through all the
I
pages there.
I saw it on Creative Loafing. I did see
So,
it on
yeah,
Creative Loafing,
so it's
but I was.
important that this board, the public has access to all of that. And it's certainly important, since it was directed to this board, I believe, that this board, understands that. So that, and I had also requested that, make sure that the
Yeah.
board gets this
When I leave here today, I
information.
will find out.
Well, again, my commentary is not on Creative Loafing. My commentary is make sure that we have a working conduit of information within the board and within the administration, that's all, through Mr. Smith. Okay. And any other commentary on this? Okay, thank you. Okay, old business, Ms. Kirk? I see you. Can you hear me? How are we on staffing?
Yes, Mr. Cosby. Pardon me?
How are we on staffing, with our staffing issues in finance?
Well, we do have 2 critical openings, but we are currently negotiating. Hopefully, we can complete that negotiation process this week for the manager of accounting. And for the director of budget and grants, I have a meeting with HR on Thursday. We recruited 3 times. We did have a viable candidate, but then she did not want to, she changed her mind. And so we're going to look at that job description and put that back out.
What seems to be the
So we are
issue?
still aggressively trying to fill those positions.
What seems to
Pardon
be what seems to be the issue with filling that?
I'm not quite sure, and that's why I'm going to meet with HR to find out exactly what that issue may be, if they received any feedback from the candidates, and maybe adjust the job description and see what we can do. But I will have that meeting, I believe it's Wednesday and Thursday, and I can certainly send you an update after that meeting.
Yes, if you could report back to the committee afterwards so that we know what's going on with that. Secondarily, where do we stand with how's the audit coming?
The audit is coming very nicely to the chair and to the members of the committee. The audit is coming nicely. We have ongoing meetings with the auditors. I know they may have reached out to a few of the board members, just to ask some general questions. And I'm very sure that we will be on time with the audit.
Okay, very good. No issues.
I don't know of any pending issues yet. I'm sorry.
Are there any issues that you're aware of at this point?
I'm not aware of any pending issues at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, any other old business?
No.
Mr. Knight, yes.
Yes, thank you, and maybe it's fall under old business. I've been trying for the last 3 months, if not longer, to get a new ID badge for HART. It's been refused, and one time, 2 months ago, it's supposed to have been at a meeting. It wasn't. I'd like to know the process, because when I go on those buses, go to the location, in fact, when we did the orientation, we took a picture and we had the badges to go. Some of the board members, directors didn't get one. That was 4 years ago. Can't see it. But when I go to different places, walk around these places, and so they don't think I'm loitering and whatever, I show the ID, talk to the workers, talk to the different ones. But now it's so hard to get a badge. Can you, Miss, explain to me why is it so hard for me to get a badge to go in these buildings?
I don't know if I should maybe kind of put this in context, and then a further discussion can move forward. It is my understanding that the type of badge that Mr. Knight is talking about allows access to all the facilities, as well as on buses and those types of items. I don't think and I haven't seen that there's been any specific policy on the part of this board as it relates to badges for entry. Because keep in mind, there are first of all, several limitations in terms of entry points into different facilities. You have federal guidelines and you also have other guidelines that you have to meet with in terms of just having people who are not specifically employed with the agencies, because you're not employees, you're board members, being involved in those operations. In addition, you have provisions in your policy which require a distance between board members and the running of the agency. So you have to be very cognizant, especially with everything that's going on now, that when, you go into a facility, that is not crossing over from the idea of, I just want to visit the facility, into any kind of perceived interference, which is why I think my recommendation would be, if that is something that we want to have further discussions about, as to badges, entry points, process for those, so that way it's known, everybody knows what the rules are, everybody understands what the rules are. We need to really add something into your policy manual, so that way everybody is clear as to what it is. I don't know that this has ever been a codified policy as it relates to badges and entry points and what those are for. So my recommendation is that we go ahead and create a policy for that.
Really, there's no need to create a policy. If you read the packet for all of the board of directors, you go through orientation, you take a picture, it's not to go all assets anywhere. In fact, coming in here, we should have had a badge down in the county when we were when we was going down to the county with the pandemic and everything. Show that we're going upstairs. At least I used to do it. Show the ID and everything like that. Not my TICO ID, not my driver license. And when I get on those buses or talk to these different ones, how you doing and everything, it was just a basic ID with your picture on it. They can see that it was issued through HART. Now all of a sudden it's expired and I can't get one. So if I can't get one, I can see how some of these other things are happening around here. What is the big secret?
Well, there's a couple of different things there. I don't know what's in your orientation packets, but I'm saying in terms of access, whether or not, what badges are appropriate or not appropriate, and what that gives you access to. I just feel there needs to be a codified process for that. But again, I haven't seen what your orientation packet says.
Can,
Ms. Kemp, yeah.
thank you. So I was surprised that anyone had a badge. I never had one. And I never had an orientation either. Yeah. So this is all news to me. I didn't, know about this. And I had, I know that there's been some legal statements with regards to this, but I think in terms of, a discussion, a policy, whatever, I think that this would be appropriate. And I think it would be a great thing to have an orientation, even if you're a commissioner but I didn't know anybody ever had an orientation or anybody ever had a badge at all, because I just want to be clear, I was out of the loop. So, and never even knew that happened. But, so I think and I think it is important that people do have orientations and that we discuss on this board what that policy is forthcoming, and access and things like that, so.
Ms. Williams?
I was just going to say, I thought I had a badge.
Do you don't have a badge now? Is it, I was given a badge when I was first appointed to HART, but I don't know there's any expiration.
I thought I was as well. And,
yeah.
I believe I got with you, Danielle, I think it was, they changed the picture. I wanted my pictures for some other reason. I think when I rode the buses, and I used my badge. So
I haven't had any issues with mine.
I've not either.
You couldn't see, after 4 years, the sun and everything, people couldn't even identify, neither could I. The same one you're talking about that was issued. All I asked for was a renewal. And that's something I've been fighting for 3 months. In fact, our CEO told me, I'll take care of it. The next call I get well, legal say this, he'll say that. I think that it's pretty petty to be talking about and arguing over a badge, a simple ID badge, really.
Please.
So we will work with general counsel, and I will get a listing from staff. I was unaware that multiple people had, it seems like there are lots of badges flowing around. So we need to make sure we have a clear understanding of who have badges and work through council to ensure that whatever policy needs to be in place to ensure that board members can have identification badges that allow them to do the business of board members is actually something that we can move forward.
I mean, with this discussion, I still think it's appropriate that there's some kind of policy put into place, because it's not just about having a badge that you can see. I will give an example. I actually am also general counsel for Tampa Sports Authority. The board members get badges, but those badges are not allowing them to go into, say, the Bucks locker room. I mean, there are limitations to those badges as to where they can actually go. So I think that it's not just about having an identification, but it's making it very clear what access that allows. And there may be places that there, and I don't know what the answer is to this part of it. There may be access, places that you can't, or there's some federal regulations as to access, and there may be some safety regulations as to access, and then also your board policies as it relates to your role as board members versus the administration. So I'm going to recommend, given that this is obviously maybe an issue that's never really been highlighted or discussed, that we go ahead and have a conversation from a policy perspective. I think if other folks have identification badges, let's go ahead and manage that issue, but there really should be a conversation so that everyone understands what that means.
It was, it would be it was my understanding, it's just, I got an ID badge. I'm Gil Schussler. I'm a member of the board of directors. Didn't give me special access to anywhere. Couldn't ride a bus for free. The only thing I could ride on was a streetcar. So I mean, that's all it was an ID badge with my name and my picture on it. That's it. So I don't believe in my opinion, it wasn't to give me access to anywhere in particular, because we don't do operations. We are strictly policy. That's all we do, and oversight. So, but, I mean, I didn't think it was anything extra. In that realm, can we get them an ID badge?
I don't see why not, if it's just
Okay.
for getting on the bus and.
In
I
the
don't-
manner
I don't know.
consistent with how other ID badges have been given, absolutely appropriate, but if there's a bigger conversation about what type of access that provides, I think there really does need to be a policy.
Well, I
on
don't
that.
disagree with that. Yes, Ms.
Yes, and I think so too. I think we need to have a policy and we need to discuss it, because it sounds like maybe Director Knight's badge did things that, I don't know, maybe you didn't use your
I never
badge
tried
to
it.
that,
I didn't
yeah.
expect it to do
Or,
anything extra.
but I will say too, I used to frequently be invited to visit the HART headquarters. There were events held there, and I got an opportunity to talk with staff some. It was different times of day, different people would just arrive, and that seems to, I've just noticed, since you've been saying that seems, those opportunities that I took advantage of when I could, always to be there at the headquarters, seem to have disappeared.
Well, I think COVID hurt a lot
That's
of
true,
that.
that's
Yeah,
true, that's COVID. But then
flipped everything
post-COVID,
upside
we
down.
kind of haven't gotten back
haven't
to
done-
anything,
exactly.
so
I
that's a
agree.
good point,
Yeah.
that's a good point. But just hearing Director, it just came to mind, hearing Director Knight say that, because
Yeah. No, I agree. I
yeah.
agree. If we can get an ID badge, that'd be the best of all. It'd be, that's all I thought it was. Okay, we beat this to death. Anything else, Mr. Knight? Ms. Kemp?
That's it, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kemp?
New business, are you going to?
Yes, new business.
Okay, I do have several items of new business, and I did talk to David Smith with regards to this before I brought it, but because I want them to be on the next agenda or reported in the next month. And Ms. Kirk, this is not personal, and I very much am appreciative of Ms. Kirk's work here. But I would like any contracts with regards to our CFO, and I'd like to understand if there's a commuting relationship from Ohio, and if HART is reimbursing that commute as part of an agreement or contract as a matter of policy. And two, as we discussed a little bit earlier, in creative loafing, we learned the results and recommendations of 3 different peer reviews. It's quite extensive, and there's a lot of information. There was a lot of expertise from around the country that was brought here to help us. I think it was about 56 pages in PowerPoints. This has now gone to board members, at least I thought, so I hope that you all will look at it. But what I want is, I want this agended on the January 9th, I guess it is, meeting, so that we can discuss or consider re-engaging APTA to do an update and have that reported to the board and get the benefits of those areas. So I'd like that agended. I've received an organizational chart from HART as of yesterday. And I'd like that sent to all board members and posted on our website. That's pretty general, operating procedure of the county. You can just go there and see the entire chart. You can go to PSTA and see 10 pages of every employee posted on their website. And I also want a presentation on our next agenda, just an overview of our organization, and so that we will be familiar and a review of the chart, so we can understand kind of our status and where we are. And finally, the RAC, the Riders Advisory Committee, which I think is a great thing for us to have, but it is a function of HART and our board. I couldn't attend the meeting the other night. I had a conflicting event, but while it's good to have this group, the RAC, the Riders Advisory Committee, should be a creature of the board. So I think it's important that Ms. LeGrand bring forward a plan for exactly how this board will be set up and who it will be, so that you can have feedback from our board here, and that we can make suggestions and either approve or not approve the structure going forward, and that, we're engaged in approving of the Riders Advisory Committee.
May I respond?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I've taken notes, so all of the items that you asked for, we will put on the agenda and be able to address in January. The last item regarding the RAC, that was something that was brought to the board several months ago. We also had a conversation in a committee forum where it was advised by General Counsel to not have the RAC be a part of the board committee structure, to ensure that we didn't have the sunshine conflict with multiple board members and having to go through all of the details associated with the actual committee of the board. What we've done thus far, we had 2 information sessions for the RAC committee. We have not formed the RAC committee as yet. So the first information session was, I want to say October, maybe it was September. I know Director Williams participated. We had several people. We really weren't able to go through the agenda of the RAC committee because it was more of, I would say, an opportunity for our customers to ask leadership questions. So it really turned into a 2-hour Q&A type of engagement. The meeting we had last week, again, was an information meeting, but primarily the conversation was around the markups, and we did have some conversations about what would the community like to see as it related to RAC. Specifically, we talked about the cadence of meetings, what items they'd like to have on the agenda, what the expectations would be for participation. So we have not gone through the process yet to actually establish the committee. But what we are in need of, since we are talking about this, is, and we shared this at both meetings, the one I think in September or October, as well as the one we had last week, is that the impetus behind having this committee is to have representation for the entire county. So the first meeting, we had a lot of representation from our ADA committee. This last meeting, it was still off balance. So as board members, it would be helpful if you could help us to identify representation that can actually sit on a formal committee that represents the entirety of the county, so that it's not all leaning toward, East Tampa or, South County. We'd like to have a balance. But that being said, we have not established the formal committee as yet. We have received some applications. I'm looking at Mr. Alvarado. I don't know how many applications we've actually received thus far. I would say a couple of dozen. So we have those applications. The one thing we did mention to the committee last week was if all of the applications are from the same community, then, everyone is open to attend, but we're not going to, our desire is not to have a committee that's comprised of everyone representing one neighborhood or one location. So that's the update on where we are. Definitely, this is our process. It's not something that just belongs to me or the staff. We definitely want to hear from the community in a meaningful way and something that's tied to the service that we deliver, and that's why that last meeting was solely focused on the markup. So we'll continue to provide updates, and as we move through the process, we'll work collaboratively.
Thank you for that. I do think that we do need to have, it sounds like it's evolved something it sounds like it's two committees to me, something like a community advisory committee and instead of a riders advisory committee, unless everybody there representing it are riders.
They're all riders.
Oh,
It's
they
a
are all
riders. Yeah, they
riders.
were all riders.
Oh, okay.
But what we didn't want were all riders that just ride one route, right?
Right. Of course not, yeah.
So that's when I say we're looking at, it's open to everyone. There's no one that will be excluded from coming and participating. But as far as the actual committee, when we actually form it, the intention is to have representation, if you will, for all routes are represented, right, or all communities.
I think it would be then in order to have an update and before this is formed, to have an understanding of the structure and be clear on this, because I know it's been mentioned, but as it evolved, and I really wanted to go to the meeting. I'm always very interested in seeing that. I wasn't able to, but I think it's important that this board, understand and get more feedback about that, and that we're more engaged in being updated.
Definitely.
Great, thank you.
Very good. Any other new business? Seeing none, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you. Have a Merry Christmas.